Welcome to Covering Our Bases. From Mets to Mariners, we break down baseball's biggest headlines and highlights with unique context from every MLB team's perspective. Now, as we cover our bases, we aim to educate, entertain, and engage the average baseball fan who just doesn't have the time to follow the other 29 teams around the league. Expect the fun Expect the fun storylines, patterns, predictions, and pageantry of Major League Baseball to be present at all times. He's NL's Dan, I'm AL Warren, and Dan, it's our first prediction show. Whoa! I'm so excited, and I know you are too. Predictions mean a lot to you, don't they?
I'm so pumped, dude. Yeah, I love taking all the excitement from an entire off season and putting all your expectations and all of those things you've seen and things you've read and piling on to a team that is far away and you have no impact on, and then seeing what happens and really just seeing how quickly they all fall apart is hilarious. And hey, every now and again you hit a diamond in the rough and it feels really good at the end of the year to be like, at least I got this one thing right, despite all this stuff.
Falling apart is a lot of what's happening in our covering the bases episode so far because we're naturally outdated. And so
Always.
we're going to appreciate this, I'm sure, at mid-season and at the end of the season, and hope you, our listeners, will follow along to see how wrong we are. I mean,
Yeah.
these can literally change as soon as next week when the season starts, huh, Dan?
Opening day. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of key injuries to just a couple people, and everything gets flipped upside down. So, yeah, let's see how wrong we are today, Warren.
So Dan and I had a nice in-depth chat before we hit the record button today to make sure that we kind of get the easy beats to this process out of the way first. Any place where we may agree, you're going to see us kind of target that. And one of the places it seems as if you and I both agree, Dan, that we'll just jump right into is why don't we try the American League East first? You may recall from our primer guys that we did have some differing opinions, if I'm not mistaken, on who would come out of the division at that time. But now we actually kind of agree. Dan, who's winning the AL East? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, for me, it's Baltimore. They're defending the crown from last year. They are returning a lot of the same pieces as we spoke to, and they added to the talent. Burns and Kimbrel are the big names.
Mm-hmm.
Reinforced the bullpen with a couple more. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just more of the same from Baltimore. And I think that the Yankees approve behind them, and I just don't think it's good enough to surpass.
Right.
What about
And
you, Ward?
for me,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. I have to go with Baltimore winning the division, but more because since we talked about the EL East in our primer literally just brief weeks ago, the Yankees have fallen under harder times with some injuries. We noticed that the center field positioning for Aaron Judge could be a mistake. And we also noticed that Garrett Cole could be losing months right at the moment, projected due to some difficulties with his throwing arm. So those are going to make big challenges to what can already be an easily kind of tarnished start for the Yankees. So, yeah, I see them taking the step back away from being a divisional winner, and Baltimore will continue to soar. I am surprised to learn, as we did, I think, last night, as of this recording, that Jackson Holliday won't be featured in the starting lineup for the Baltimore Orioles as they start the season. But talk about a piece to have in your back pocket should the need arise. And that just shows the confidence this team does have in the lineup that was already so strong at the end of last year. So these guys went to the playoffs, they got better, and now they have the experience to say this is our division and hands off, even to such a, well, we can call a blossoming franchise as the Yankees may have been in this offseason theoretically. There's just too many intangibles limiting us from putting them straight on top. And I think that puts the AL East well behind us, huh, buddy?
Yeah, definitely. I think it should be a really competitive division outside of Boston. So could see this being totally wrong, but as of now,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to see anyone but Baltimore really rising to the top and winning probably 100 games.
Mm-hmm. It would take Toronto definitely using every veteran that they have in their lineup, similar to what the Yankees are going to have to do, because we talked about how age leaves them both feeling kind of strapped with what they have. And we've talked about how the Rays may have a lot of youth and power, but something about, again, their intangibles have them feeling like they're taking steps back comparatively. And the Rays may surprise both of us the most. They would probably be the biggest one out of left field if they do end up taking the division and or even having a playoff berth, as you'll find as our predictions go on. But for now, we both lock in the Baltimore Orioles, and it's hard not to. Dan, we move right along then to another division that seems fairly easy to call on paper, and I'm sorry for that because it's your division, the
Oh,
the NL East. Dan and I want to extend a heartfelt thank you for listening to our NL East primer. For those of you who went back in time to take that in, it was our roughest of recordings, but it is such a great division. We almost regret that that's the case. Right now, you can really say on my end, the Braves truly need to win this division. They need to excommunicate the demons of the postseason, but it starts with being the most dominant team they can be right there in the division for the season standings. And as Philadelphia has certainly done all they need to do to remain fresh in our minds as a contender in the division as well, I just don't think they've done enough to completely supplant Atlanta when they've done a lot to really try to ensure their stability. We know how strong the rotation is. We know how strong the lineup is. And Dan, I bet you're going to remind everybody as you lock in and reassert your pick who's winning the AL East or NL East, excuse me.
well, I can't argue with you too much, Warren, because I think you're right. I think it's the Atlanta Braves. I think that there's an expectation with this team that's developed over the last few years. Great organization, drafted well, developed well, made good, savvy moves to improve the team, and has just built on that, built on that, built on that. And they've had some recent postseason struggle, but they're relatively healthy going into the year, and they've shown growth the last couple of years. So totally see them taking the next step, dominating the regular season, and really starting the mission in the postseason. So hard to say anything different than that. Phillies as a wild card is a good call. You know, as much as I want to really put the Mets in there, and I think they can be competitive if the Phillies stumble, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's pretty clear that it's the Phillies and then everybody else behind them. Washington's a better team, and Miami is maybe not better, but still competitive. And any team with Luis Arias is going to be competitive. So uh, that's going to be up in the air, but I don't see another wild card being past the Phillies. So we agree again, Warren. How boring.
Yes, boring indeed. And I know you listeners are really happy you tuned in now, but don't worry. The pod is young. I have a feeling we're gonna hit snags sooner rather than later. Dan, um, I would have loved just to say that we talked just a second more about the other teams in this division. I would have loved to say that I had faith in your Mets to step into the playoff contention, especially with the signing recently of JD Martinez. I think that's a great pickup for you. I do think the team is going to be able to remain in the mix later than you did last year, falling out of contention in August. I think you last till about September. I just
Oh, gee,
cannot.
thanks.
You're welcome. I can't quite fathom the Marlins right at the moment, as much as I know our last talk about them didn't feature the fact that Tim Anderson has now been added to that team, and they really do theoretically have some pretty awesome potential around Jazz Chisholm Jr., Luis Arias, Jake Berger, and now a Tim Anderson who's going to be looking to prove his worth. But there's something gross about the Marlins, just Gross. There's something I don't like about the Marlins and the way they run their team in a similar fashion to the San Francisco Giants we got done talking about just recently. So it's like hard to want to endorse those Marlins. And you're right, the Nationals, they're young, they're growing, they're getting pieces that are getting stronger. I love Elaine Thomas. I love a CJ Abrams. This time is not yet theirs. So, cool. Why don't I let you lead us in? What division are you so certain about next?
For me, man, it's got to be the NL West, and we all know who it is. It's the Dodgers. Yes, they got Otani, they got Yamamoto, and at this point, we have seen actually baseball from this division. Warren, we've seen a couple games that we've talked about already, but we've seen the Dodgers and the Padres. And yeah, I'm still at this point going to say that the Dodgers are the most improved and best team in the National League West. locked up.
Of course you would, Dan. Absolutely you would. The absolute talent on this lineup, top to bottom, the rotation with arms that they can literally give away. How could you not pick the Dodgers? And
You can't.
I will disagree with you.
Wow. What?
Listen, guys, if you caught the NL West podcast, you'll know that I'm bandwagoning. And if I'm going to bandwagon, I got to double down. And I'm bandwagoning for the Arizona Mariners. I mean, the Arizona
Huh?
Diamondbacks. Yeah, huh? Nani? Guys, check it out. The Arizona Diamondbacks almost won the World Series last year. Almost, as I know, loosely used. It was 4-1. But the reality is that they got better over this offseason, and they do have the chemistry, they have the youth, they have a lot of upside in this lineup that has me super excited for good reason. I hope that Eugenio Suarez is not completely burned out and flourishes with the Diamondbacks. I'm hoping that Paul Sewald locks down every closing opportunity he has. I hope Corbin Carroll is a National League MVP contender by the time it's all said and done. So these are all really real possibilities. And so I'm going to, for the sake of reminding you that any team can truly do this, I'm going to remind you that the Diamondbacks did last year and that they can do it again. I know they didn't win the division, and I know they didn't
Right.
win the World Series, but
Right.
they set themselves up to be the team to watch in a very tough division, and I'm going to go ahead and side with them. Now, I know the Giants and the Padres have gotten a lot better on paper, even since our recording, of course, because that's how it works for us.
Welcome to the show.
And Dan and I definitely agree that this is the toughest division in baseball this year, and the one that's most exciting to watch, and the one that can have all the most number of outcomes. But I don't think any team is as prepared to show off their chemistry and their, well, commitment to their future quite like the Diamondbacks. Go Snakes, go. What about you, Dan? Oh, we already did that. What do you feel, Dan? Is that okay? Are you gonna
I
you're
would,
gonna disown me as a baseball
the
fan?
Hey man, I'm proud of you. No, I would love it if Arizona won the division. Like I'm confident that they're a playoff team, but yeah, I mean, I talked about the deficiencies that we've seen from the Dodgers pitching, and that got kind of amplified in the two games that we saw. So
Mm-hmm.
Arizona has, I think, a better staff, and I'd argue better than the Giants too. So no, I see the logic behind it, dude. I hope it happens, and I also just want to say that the Colorado Rockies are here. They're here. They
Oh,
shoot. They showed up for spring training, Warren. They're here. They're playing the games this year. I know.
hey, oh, they've got some young talent that I know we highlighted it in our talk, but the team as a whole isn't worth going too far back in time for and digressing too much for. One day I'd like to see Colorado play winning baseball. I honestly mean that. I think, as I said, they've got a beautiful ballpark. They have a beautiful uniform set of colors. Like, I like them, but they don't like themselves. So, moving on, let's go ahead and target how about the National League Central? This is one where I do know at the moment we did disagree, and I wonder as we lock in our final votes if we'll continue to. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I do personally feel that of the team compiled with veterans ready to win this division, there are several here. I do think it's the Chicago Cubs and their new general
Mhm.
manager, Greg Counsell, at this point, who are going to take advantage of the opportunities, who are going to strategize correctly enough to win the NL Central. I do not think the St. Louis Cardinals are going to be as good as some are saying they will be out there, and I do think they even miss these playoffs. I do think the Milwaukee Brewers are taking several steps backwards, but still pretending that they have a shot because they have enough of their pitching staff still intact to believe that. And good luck. May their youth actually truly surprise everybody this year. I do think the Pirates are truly intriguing, and even though you sunk my battleship when we discussed this division, I do have an exciting prediction later in the show about the Buccos, and I can't wait to share it. And when it comes to those Reds, maybe injuries, maybe suspensions are getting in the way here,
Maybe
but
both.
I do have them as a really tantalizing part of this division. I really do think they can surprise us too, maybe even more so. than some of the other teams that we have to kick around here, but I don't see them quite making it overall at this stage with so many hurdles already to overcome. And I know rambled a lot. Your turn, Dan. Did I sway you? Are the Cubs now the team you believe in, or are we still in a disagreement here?
Well, the Bellinger signing really jumps the Cubs up, and they certainly have, I would say, the highest ceiling. But when it all shakes out, I still think the Cardinals are going to rebound and take the division. And I think it will be close, and the Cubs will be in the conversation. I think the Reds would have been if not for their recent struggles. They could be playing catch up again in the second half of the year, and we saw how that ended last year, them falling short. So I could see that being a similar situation. But yeah, I really think that the Cardinals are going to rebound. I understand the Cubs taking a step, and I understand that people maybe already putting too much expectation on the Cardinals because Warren, there's a valley in data between a one-off and a trend.
Right.
There's as a blip, it happens once, and then when it happens twice or more so, it becomes a trend, right? And we're in the valley between those with the Cardinals right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody would love to say last season was a blip, it was a one-off, it was historically bad, unusually
Mm.
so for this organization and even a lot of these players. Nolan Arenado broke his 10-year consecutive Gold Glove streak. Would have set the new record if he had gotten it.
Oh,
Like,
yep.
and it's not like he fell off a cliff or anything like defensively or anything like that. It's just a bad year all around. So people are hoping, and I am betting that they come back even half as good as what people expect and still manage to take the division.
There are a few franchises out there who are in a prove it year, much like maybe Pete Alonso is for the Mets, or, stars like that who are looking to get the big fat contract next year. But there are teams who are like that. I'd say Toronto's one, and I know we already brushed by their division, so a fun one to point out there. I would say maybe Texas is certainly on one because they need to prove they won the World Series for a reason. But
The
hey,
Twins,
the Twins,
Arizona.
cool. Hey, Arizona is ready to prove it. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the St. Louis Cardinals are on a prove it year for sure. And it's quite an interesting distinction you throw on this year for them. It's, hey, are you a trend or are you a blip? And
Mhm.
it's a huge, huge question to the culture of their team. So we'll find out. And right in the thick of it is Paul Goldschmidt and his contract, where he is that player within that organization on a prove it year. And I would hope because he's on my fantasy team, that means he's gonna play with motivation. But
Yeah.
you know what? You've done enough to make me feel strongly that one Cardinal that did join the team over the offseason is going to rise to the occasion. And in one of my later predictions, I'll tell you which one it is. But I
Okay. I
hear it.
already know it's Lance Lynn, but that's okay.
Shut the front door is all I can say. I have very little faith in Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. So there it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move forward and acknowledge our next series of potential contenders. It feels like the other Central should step in here because it's
Yeah.
very, 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 very up in the air for me anyway.
Mhm.
Dan, I'm gonna make you put your nail in the coffin first. Who are you burying as the winner of this division?
Oh, well, man, I know it's real tempting to say that the Twins are going to return and win the crown again. But for me, the winner of this division is the most improved from last year, and that's the Kansas City Royals. From last to first, baby. Let's go. Kansas City winning the division and making the postseason.
I love the boldness. We talked about this before the camera started rolling, that we understand it takes maybe about 25 more wins for the Kansas City Royals to do just what you're saying. But I look at the changes, and it's hard for me to not at least acknowledge that they've done a lot in order to get those 25 wins. I mean, tell us about some of the additions you're most excited about. Why is this moving the needle so much? Just to take pause on a team that we're really predicting to take a serious jump here.
Well, a couple arms they brought in Warren Lugill
Mhm.
and Waka, proven starters in the league.
Mhm.
Kind of take some pressure off of Singer and some of their other younger pitchers, so that they can continue to
Mhm.
grow and develop, and they project to do pretty well in situations if they don't have the stress of being an ace like they were the last couple of years with Granky still on the team. Um,
Right. Yeah.
And then you got guys like Bobby Witt Jr. that are stepping into elevated roles and really taking an offensive punch to this team. They have drafted and developed, in a similar way we've seen Houston and Atlanta and these other good teams since their championship. They committed to the full rebuild after winning in 2015. This one, Warren, this one right here. So yeah, after that, they committed to the rebuild and they sucked hard for a few years. And Salvador Perez came out the other side. He's still there leading this new young team. And they are ready to get into the postseason, much like Baltimore last year, ready to take that step. And I think they're going to surprise and impress this year.
MJ Melendez, Vinny Pasquantino. If those guys are going to add a ton of value to this lineup alongside Bobby Witt Jr. and the names you already mentioned, Salvador Perez, Cool Hand Luke, their catcher behind the mound or the plate, excuse me, and Hunter Renfroe coming in is another sneaky pickup. I don't disagree. I mean, it was really hard for me to want to find a more compelling story to celebrate in this division. And even at this moment, Dan, I am truly going through every team not called the Chicago White Sox thinking, well, they do it, right? But if I'm being honest, Minnesota lost New York. Even with Justin Topa coming over in a Seattle trade, I quite like him in the bullpen for them. I don't see their offense being as stiff as MLB.com lists them as the 9th best lineup and certainly the best in this division in all of Major League Baseball. Yeah, I just don't see Buxton, first of all, remaining healthy enough, right? That's a big thing for him. I don't see the lineup as compelling in that light. So I then move on to let's go with your Royals. Like, I love that the Royals are your pick. I'd love to shove them forward with as much confidence, but we're talking about a massive turnaround here, and I do think they get much better, and I even consider them for a wild card. I just have to miss on them this time. And now it's down to really two. The Detroit Tigers, the Cleveland Guardians. I am at a neck-to-neck for them because I have such a respect for Jose Ramirez, and I want him to have a winning team around him, and I want him to succeed, and I want him to want to succeed. So I kind of wish that this was a prove-it year for Cleveland, but they've done nothing in the offseason to warrant it except the swing. They did get Ramon Laureano back. Ramon Laureano was on his way to having an incredible career with the Athletics before becoming part of this Guardians team. He was injured very dramatically and lost all of his 2023, and now he's back with this lineup, and he could, and I will go ahead and say, will be the difference maker in why Cleveland is going to return to the top of this division instead of the Detroit Tigers that have so much compelling youth and some veteran leadership that made them almost my choice here. But if I'm sticking to my guns and my respect for Cleveland's star, Jose Ramirez, as much as I wish to, I have to think they're going to put it together and figure out why they weren't in contention last year. And they've got Stephen Vogt now, and I might as well appreciate him too for what he's done for the Mariners organization and say he's the voice of reason to set Cleveland straight.
Third place last year, Ward. Wow, that's a big step.
Big step.
Especially, I like it, though.
Especially to not add anything. I mean, this is one of the most neutral teams in all of the offseason, and it's a disappointment. But I wonder if, since they found it a few years ago, this team can still find it again and get back to where they were. I like that more than I like relying on a Detroit Tigers team that has a ton of talent, sure, but much of it unproven. And even still, I'll tell you guys, watch Kerry Carpenter this year. As a Tiger, I like him quite a lot. But I like Cleveland more for this division. And I promise, guys, that was a curveball. I was going with the Tigers until this exact 11th hour. So kudos to Swerves at the last second. Let's have some fun.
Ward. But you know what? I don't think we're going to disagree on this last division. I think you must have gotten the order wrong on here, dude. Because there's a shakeup here. It's true. I think we both know it. There's a shakeup in the AL West. Those Houston Astros, not this year. Sorry. I don't care that you got Josh Hader. Oh, my. You didn't get Blake Snell.
I knew I would
It's
convince you that there would be a new divisional leader. I
Yep,
knew that I would
it's
show
true.
you that the
Yep,
best team in the AL West would most definitely
yep, it's
be.
time for the Texas Rangers to take over. And what's wrong with your face, Warren? You have Texas too, right?
I'm turning Texas red. Dan Harrow, please tell us, the World Series champions, they should have some respect on their name. They should be at least a lock to finally dethrone the Houston Astros on their stretch of dominance. I got to hear you tell us. I got to hear you tell us cuz I'm coming right back at you, I promise. Why Texas?
Well, they had a wonderful run last year and they really made it a race. And they actually finished with the same record as Houston. And Houston ended up winning it on the tiebreaker. You know,
Mhm.
they come in this year, they don't have Jordan Montgomery yet, yet.
Yet.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Knowing us, it's probably about to happen. But the
Literally 30 minutes after we stop recording. Literally 30 minutes. I'm
literally.
predicting it.
But they return a lot of the same roster. Wyatt Langford is the hot kid who already made the opening day roster, is gonna start with the team. And the Rangers surprised a lot of people with a dominant playoff run last year and a really strong
Mhm.
showing in the World Series. And they want to carry that momentum. And the next step for them is winning the division, the thing that they fell short of last year. Of course, they
Mhm.
want to repeat. They seem like a playoff team. But yeah,
Mhm.
that next step is getting past Houston. And I think that they just barely managed to do it.
Oh my goodness. And, Ezekiel Duran, Leody Taveras. I love that they picked up Jared Walsh. I have a lot of love for Jared Walsh, a former Angel who went through a lot of mental challenges to get him back to this level. I'm glad Texas is going to allow him to be their starting first base as they get to the start of the season. At least it looks that way. So that's cool. Jonah Heim, Adolis Garcia. You mentioned Langford. I want to mention Evan Carter. Like, whew, nobody's thinking about how good Evan Carter is going to be. Maybe as soon as this year. I mean, but give it 3 years and he's terrifying. Already terrifying now is Marcus Simeon. Nobody wants to really pitch to him. So, I get it. Texas's lineup is stacked. And even without a Jordan Montgomery, you still have to contend with a Nathan Eovaldi. You still have to deal with John Gray. And as hit and miss as Andrew Heaney can be on the mound, I mean, I like him. And I like a Dane Dunning. This is a strong rotation overall. For sure, Bradford's no slouch. So they're lined up really well. The reason why the Seattle Mariners are going to be the best team in the division,
What?
however, the reason why the Seattle Mariners are going to be the best team in this division, though, is because I prophesized last season that if we missed the 2023 playoffs, we were going to come back in 2024 hungry and motivated and new. And the team has done exactly that. The wizardry that Justin, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. I shouldn't have started with that, but Jerry DiPoto, our general manager, has done to put together the roster they have is nothing short of, honestly, front office of the year type of award consideration for me. I bet the Royals might actually challenge that, or the Yankees by the end of it all, or the Dodgers. Anyway, let's not digress. Point is, the Mariners have worked damn hard, and they have never looked better. I have paid attention to so much baseball this offseason and watched so much preseason. I feel this team is ready to win baseball games, and I am ready to die on the hill in faith of them. I can go on and on about all the different pieces that will determine this, whether it's Dom Canzone, who may or may not even make the opening roster. I do think of him as a seasonal X factor. I can think about Luis Urias and Josh Rojas being better together than Eugenio Suarez was at the hot corner last year. Now he had a great defensive year, but let's not let me get a lack of confidence now. I believe Julio Rodriguez is the sexiest pick for Major League Baseball's MVP to come out of the American League this year. I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's real. I think Cal Raleigh is one of the finest leaders that nobody talks enough about in our league, period. I think that Ty France, who spent his entire offseason reworking his swing, is ready to show the dividends that did show in JP Crawford's work last season. I go on and I go on, but most importantly, boy, we have MajorLeagueBaseball.com's #1 pitching staff in all of Major League Baseball. We're talking better than Atlanta. We're talking better than XYZ, including those darn Astros. We are #1 on the mound. So I would be really, really missing an opportunity to prove my fandom once and for all and remind you, Dan, and the rest of the viewership here on Covering the Bases, the Mariners are the best team in the American League West 2024, and I am going to die on this mound. Let's go.
Okay, dude, I love it. Your whole intro with like it's their time and like the growth and this and that. The whole time I was like, it sounds like me last year. It's like word for word, pound for pound, just the optimism and look at all these PLAers we got and look how the progress and yeah, man. I hope the best for you. You're in a tough division. We'll see what happens, but I hope the Mariners win the AL West.
That's a nice thing for you to say. We'll see how that tune holds up when these predictions start to crumble or start to solidify in the
Yep.
direction we are expecting. So that's it, man. That's the divisional breakdown. We're done, right? I don't have to die on any more hills, do I?
Hey, man, let's just make a couple other, speculative predictions. Let's be reckless. Let's jump.
Ooh.
We said the division winners. What about the wild cards? You got 3 wild cards from each league. What do you think, Warren?
Okay, here we go. The wild cards, after breaking down each of these divisional winners, are arguably harder, but I'm going to go with the National League. We'll start there. I'm going to go that the Dodgers obviously earn a wild card if I'm not putting them as a divisional winner.
Okay, that's fair.
So you have to do that. I do feel as if the Phillies are too good in the National League East to avoid earning themselves a playoff berth once again. And their chip on their shoulder is almost as big as Atlanta's, Los Angeles Dodgers, or Seattle's. So Philadelphia is just as mad as any of the others. And now it really makes me want to think who among the rest of the potential contenders really has the strongest say. I mean, we've talked about how the Reds are really embracing the current meta of the game. What could be the only thing that really gets in their way is their lack of identity and knowing, how they're going to handle their lineup in each and every situation. And they've already got suspensions and injuries that are limiting really that depth that we were so excited about. I think of the Pirates, who have a very surprising star that will still earn one of my interesting predictions here shortly. But their lineup, though 6 deep, maybe isn't enough to outrun their holy rotation, right? They're kind of empty rotation. And I know if anybody mentions the Pirates in a predictions episode, it's going to be me. So that was me doing my best. Well, then that leaves the National League West. And, I've already given up the Dodgers. It's down to those Giants and those Padres, who both just added a lot in the last week. So for me, my final wild card is actually going to be the Padres. And I feel that way because their 3 starting pitchers at this point now, with Dylan Cease added to the mix, are very formidable. You can argue their 4th with Michael King is a huge upper. You know what I mean? Like they've got a better rotation than I think we thought they did. And then you look at their lineup, and they still have Manny Machado, and they still have Fernando Tatis. And if they get anything like we saw over the weekend, consistently out of young guns like Campusano and Melville, right? I'm hoping Melville is his last name. Merrill. Thank you, Jackson Merrill. That was it. Thank you. If they continue to play like they did over the weekend, and you get your Cronenworths and your Bogarts contributing, you get Ha-Seong Kim doing what Ha-Seong Kim does, like, this is a good Padres team. And I felt that way before, and I think I feel it even more now that the Giants are continuing to remind us that they're not a team you kind of want to root for, unfortunately. What about you, Dan? The wild cards. I think we've heard the term, you and I, before. What do they mean to you in the National League?
Flashbacks. My head hurts.
It's like alternate universes that are still very real.
Yeah, don't cross the streams. Yeah. The wild cards in the National League. Well, going with the predictions that I've already made makes sense that it would be the Diamondbacks and the Phillies would get in, just like you've
Mhm.
alluded to with the Snakes being your division winner.
Yep.
So that last spot, you brought up a lot of good points about the Reds, and that does push them back for me. I'm
Uh,
not as high on the Padres. I feel
oh.
like we've seen the best of Joe Musgrove already to get a little bit exposed in one of those games that we saw this past weekend. And Michael King
Mm-hmm.
was a bullpen guy that struggled for the Yankees last year, and he came out of the bullpen the other day for the Padres, and kind of struggled there too. So didn't look very different. I'm not as high on the depth there, and I think
Zero
that the
earned runs,
Giants.
Dan. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. I feel like the Giants have taken enough of a step forward, especially with the signing of Blake Snell. The Snell Webb 1-2 is pretty formidable in the division, and
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see them winning more games through the course of the season than the Padres do, who are already 1-1. I'll point out.
So you're locking in those Giants after all. But are you rooting for them? That's the difference.
No, no, definitely not. I think they're good enough that they can get there, and I could see them underperforming too because they have in the last couple of years. A lot of former Mets on that Giants team. I see
Mm.
you, Wilmer. You may have let JD go, but Conforto's still there too. I see you guys. No, I don't. I don't see them really competing with the at the same level that the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks will be at. But I do think they can end up with a better record than the Padres.
And they're better than the Mets then, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately, they are. Better pitching
Now,
staff, better yeah, they're better than we are. Don't make me talk about this more.
my bad, buddy. I mean, I as somebody who wanted to have a reason to believe in the Mets this year, it sucks to know that my own co-host doesn't quite have that same oomph behind his team. So I'll tell you what, in my heart, I'm rooting for the Mets over those Giants if it's really going to come down between one or the other. But I still think the Padres have the edge, and I think the players will show that with how they play this year. So that's a really fun mini feud between you and I. Which S blank team is going to win? SD,
Yes,
SF? We will see.
we'll see.
Um, and we'll save the pause jokes for later on that. Now, I believe with the wild cards in the National League taken into account, we simply must respect our American League
We may as well.
counterparts. Absolutely. So I'm going to share that the Rangers, of course, the World Series champions, it would be pretty depressing to see them fall out of playoff contention, especially with the quality of team that we just kind of sort of gave the highlight to. So the Rangers make one of my postseason berths as a wild card. I do think the Yankees do enough to earn one as well. It would take a lot of their pieces tumbling quite far apart from what we expect for them to miss the playoffs entirely. And as the Rays and Toronto Blue Jays both look a little bit more unstable, even with what we're learning about the Yankees' health situation, I just have to think that they've done too much to fall out of our consideration. So the Yankees are in, and then whether I like it or not, the Royals, the Rays, the Jays, none of them have done enough. Not even the Tigers, right? Since they were kind of on my bubble, none of them have done enough to take away from the fact that the Houston Astros are still the Houston Astros. And as much as I have a motto in my house, and it is fire truck the Astros, right? Um, I will have to make sure that they're in these playoffs so that we can beat them when it matters most at some point down the bracket, which I think you'll clarify for me in a few minutes. But anyway, Houston has to be on these in these playoffs, excuse me, and I'll leave it at that. What about you, Dan? The AL. I know that that's the other league to you, but I'm sure you know enough from your research here to pinpoint who's going to these wildcard spots for you.
Yeah, not too different. I do have the Yankees as a wild card team. I don't think they win the division, much like you, but I do still think that they're strong enough. A team with Juan Soto and Aaron Judge and Stanton has looked a lot better already, and just a lot of pieces are rebounding enough there that even if Cole isn't there, I'm confident in Stroman. I love Nestor Cortez. There's enough good pieces in there that they will still be able to make the playoffs. I also have the
Huh?
Astros, much like you do, and so locking up the last wild card spot. But I have the Blue Jays making the playoffs, Warren, in the out of the AL West rather than the Seattle Mariners. And I'm sorry, I everything you said, I get it.
Ooh.
It's just so you're high on your own supply, man, and you're not
Ooh.
wrong about any of the things you're saying. It's just it's baseball, and guys
Ooh.
are gonna get hurt. Some guys are gonna be great, and some guys are gonna be not. And you're not gonna use the same five starters past the first month of the season. I promise you, you will not. And
Uh-huh.
the perfect picture will crumble to the point that I think the Blue Jays have really taken a step this year away from just the power and decent pitching to try and be a more balanced roster, to try and win more baseball games in the regular season to get a higher playoff seed so that they can make more noise in the postseason. And I think they take that step, and I think they lock up that wild card spot.
We've
Sorry.
said it already. Hey, you can apologize. That's fine. The reality is that I, as a baseball fan, recognize that there are 30 excellent teams across the league, and only 12 of them make these playoffs. And my goal is to always appreciate at least 12 teams around the league and root for them. Now, Mariners will always get number one, and it sounds like Diamondbacks are going to get used to getting number two. But I'm not I'm not unrealistic here. There's plenty of paths that see that Seattle does underwhelm me. Not that I'm going to vote against them. Not that I'm not going to put my hat into the ring for them. But those Toronto Blue Jays, we've said it already in this show, they are on a prove it year as a franchise. And as heartbreaking as some scenarios can be, I would be heartbroken to see a Bo Bichette Vladimir Guerrero Jr. duo broken up or less invested in because they couldn't reach a pinnacle this year of some kind. And I think a pinnacle has to be not just a playoff berth, but a series win and a resounding one. So they need that. They need that more than the Mariners, quite frankly, need what I'm predicting for them in this show right now. We have a 10-year ceiling, and for all I know, you guys are going to be listening to me vote Mariners for the next 10 years, whether you like it or not. So I would root for the Toronto Blue Jays to meet some version of success enough to keep this core together because I like the vibe. I do, and I like the legacies. I just have to respectfully hope that you're wrong, Dan, because
All right.
as much as I would hope that they can prove it to an extent, I would wish them outside those playoffs, but we've already
Oh.
established that.
So we have some differences in both of the leagues, Warren, and we have some things to look back on later in the year. So, you know what? Hey,
Mm-hmm.
while we're at it, why don't we just, who do you think is going to be in the World Series, dude? We have our playoff teams. Who's going to be in the World Series? I'll start if you don't mind. I'm pretty sure
Oh
it's
my God.
unfortunate. I don't think it's going to be anybody new. I'm sorry. I think it's going to be Atlanta from the National League, and I think it's going to be the
Hmm.
Astros. Oh, I don't want it, but
What?
yeah, I know when it comes to the postseason, experience, depth, yeah, I see it being Atlanta and Houston, but I have the Braves continuing sorry, I forgot who won the World Series a couple of years ago. Um,
Uh,
I have the
let's
Braves
see.
extending. I have the Braves extending the Astro championship less years, one more time at least, and beating the Braves, beating the Astros in six. A lot of members of this roster who were not on the previous one, so should be a momentous if it does happen. But that's my prediction, Warren. What do you think for the World Series?
You've cut me so deep, Dan. Our friendship has never been so challenged as it is right now, but
I'm so
I
sorry.
I will grit my teeth and be a professional, you know. I'll be a professional here and move forward and tell you that I also have the Atlanta Braves bucking the trends and proving once and for all that they are on the borderline of a dynasty. I also predict it has absolutely nothing to do with Jared Kelnick.
Agreed.
But I will say, good. I will say that the Mariners are going to march their way through the postseason bracket and I know it's a little
What?
early in our prediction history together to go all in on my team so bravely, but I would like to put myself out there in a fragile place and a vulnerable one to all of our fan base and allow myself to be brokenhearted irrevocably by the end of the year by putting this out there. But I do have Atlanta versus Seattle in the World Series. And Dan, you know what? Let's make my pain even more complete because I have the Mariners winning in 6 games. 6. And I'm okay with the pain that is to come from the multitude of different ways that this will be disappointed. But I love my team and I'm excited for the disappointment and the process of how it comes so I can learn so much more about why not to get so excited as I will have to learn here as in my early years of talking baseball. So, go Mariners. Seattle in 6. I'm not
Wow.
afraid to feel that pain. Bring it on. Bring on the
I mean,
disappointment, baby. Let's
well,
go.
well, you'll never know the pain of being a Mets fan, but I gotta ask you, Warren, do you think your team will get all the way there? Who do you think they're going to beat on the path? What are the teams they'll conquest in their way to this World Series berth?
So you're gonna have to help me not thoroughly embarrass myself on bracket understanding, but I think as we kind of primed, I do have Baltimore as your top divisional team. They were last year. They've only gotten better, and I don't see New York interfering with that, nor any other team in the East. So they will sit at number 1. I see Seattle earning the number 2 spot as they would have had they won 2 more games. By the way, this past year. Friendly reminder, we only need to win 2 more games, and we have definitely got a team that's going to do that. So I'll see you later on that
Yeah.
simple piece of logic. But
Hope it's
anyway,
55% instead of 53.
now you don't want us to be friends. Okay. So Seattle will take the number 2 seed and get a bye. And that would mean they would face, I think you're going to tell me the 6th seed or the lowest seed, right?
Right.
Whoever wins the 3rd seed and the 6th seed. So I'm thinking 3rd seed is going to be Detroit. No, I was going to have Detroit, but now I'm thinking Cleveland, right?
Yes.
Cleveland versus, I'm going to go with the Yankees in that
Yep.
final matchup because I do think Texas and Houston are going to play the Seattle Mariners as close as we did last year, and it's just a slight it's just a slight differentiation in order. But the Yankees will struggle the most to earn that playoff spot. I do see the Yankees beating Cleveland, so they will face between Texas and Houston. I think Texas. I think Houston gets their revenge. So Houston versus help me out now. Am I doing the right thing? Houston versus New York, and
Yeah.
then we face the winner. Is that what's happening? Because I guess that means we have to beat Baltimore, don't we? That doesn't make sense. No, we have to beat.
No. You
See,
play the Yankees.
we beat the Yankees, obviously, and then
Yes.
Houston
Houston would
versus
play
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
And I love that because I think it's the ultimate inexperience versus true experience. And I think true experience will win one more time to set up the ultimate Houston versus Seattle in the NLCS. Let us be the ones to beat them this time in 7. Yep. Let us be the ones to beat them to go to the World Series in 7. And that's what sets us up with the most confidence we can to beat a team like Atlanta. So there you have it. I hope I didn't show my crappy understanding of the playoff bracket too profusely.
Now you're slaying some demons on that run too. The Yankees, a lot of history there with Seattle, and then
Mm-hmm.
division rival, recent
Yep.
champion in Houston, and then
Yep.
going up against I think the best team in the National League. And hey, that ain't easy for me to say, Warren. They're in my division, okay? It's I feel those NLS vibes for everybody else dealing with the Dodgers. Believe me. So hey, I love
Mm-hmm.
it. Die on the hill, Warren. Stay with it. I want to see it happen for you. One of us will be right and the other will be wrong, and we will see who it is at the end of the year.
Absolutely, but I bet we're both wrong on like a lot of the other little pieces, right? We're probably both wrong about the exact scenario. For all we know, it's going to be Houston and what am I going to say? The Cardinals in the World Series, right? Like let's blow up all expectation. That can definitely
Yeah.
happen, but
I mean, who would have thought last year it would be Texas and Arizona? Everybody
precisely.
said LA and Atlanta, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I just love the process. So I'm sure no matter how badly Seattle fails, at which point in this bracket, I mean, I'll just be grateful to see them back in the playoffs. I do feel like it's playoff or bust for the
Yeah.
quality of the year for me. But anyway, blah 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 blah. So we're done, right? We're done with predictions. Or are you going to kick down
You
your
know what?
bracket?
Hey man, let's no. Let's let's lightning round some awards and some stuff really quick, and then we'll get out of here and we'll start baseball finally.
Yes, we are so close, and I'm so excited. Go ahead, give me one of the awards you want us to talk about.
All right, let's do it, man. Let's do league MVP. Real easy, real quick. For me, I'll start American League. I got Bobby Witt Jr., dude. He's the reason that the Royals win that division and get that playoff berth.
Hey, and for the AL, I do the same, of course, with my own star stud, Julio Rodriguez. And you gotta love the parity between these two. These two can be contending for MVPs for the next X amount of years, right?
Yeah,
And I love that if you're gonna die on the hill of a Royals playoff berth, that's definitely the way it gets done, with him having one of the best years of his career. And if Seattle's gonna do what they're gonna do, and they are gonna do it, Julio is the reason why at the core of it all, for sure. Cool. What
two
about the
guys.
NL?
I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna say two guys quick on the bag, and base paths are a little bigger this year, so I'm sure that'll be a big part of it too. And also for the
Hmm.
National League, which for me it's got to be Cody Bellinger. He goes back to the Cubs, he
Wow.
turns in another MVP season, and then he opts out and gets that contract he's been chasing. I think he's got the fire. I
Ooh.
think the Cubs are set up to really ride him, and just like they did last year, they know that's how they're going to take that division if they have a chance at it.
Wow. Okay. I like it, but I do think that we have a rare instance of a repeat because the biggest chip in the shoulder in the entire league, I feel, is on Atlanta's shoulders. And I think Ronald Acuna Jr. is a man possessed, and he won it last season. And while there are plenty of people who look good against him in this lineup or in this category, I just I think Atlanta's got the most to prove, and they will respond with the loudest, their best player giving the loudest message that they're the MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr.
Nice. I like it. And let's keep it rolling, dude. What about the
Yeah,
batting title, man?
that was some fast lightning, by the way. Whoa, real blink of an eye.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just teasing. I'm teasing because I think we have to be long winded. And the batting title, cool. So the player with the best batting average, is that really all this is?
Yeah, and it could kind of be anybody, but you got to think about contact guys, on base guys, and if we start off in the American League, for me, I think Corey Seager could do it. He came really close last year, within a
Mm-hmm.
few points, so I think he
Mm-hmm.
can do it with a full season. What about you?
I like it. Now I'd be pretty dumb to pick a Mariner when the team was like third in strikeouts last year or something like that, and lost a lot of those pieces. So, but I'm gonna go with somebody who's a little bit out of left field. I was looking through the numbers at some of the rookie performances, some of the batting performances, and there's this guy in Minnesota who I'm a little high on, and I feel like taking an outside shot at, and I have a lot of faith in Royce Lewis. You talk about contact being important, and the last Minnesota Twin to win a batting title was named Luis Ariz, and he played that important position in Minnesota too when he did it. So I feel as if Royce Lewis might have the contact skills to put the bat to ball enough to actually carry that team quite a bit this upcoming year and give them the best shot at contending and to retain their championship in the AL Central. And my gut just goes with Royce. So keep an eye on him. He's a very, very talented player, and I just see him taking a jump this year, and we'll see what happens.
I like it. If he stays healthy, that's a great pick, and I could see him doing it. Well, for the National League, Warren, I'm going to go with Luis Ariz, his
Ah,
second consecutive National League title and his
yeah.
third in a row American League, then two
Hmm.
National Leagues. And he signed a 1-year arbitration contract. So it makes
Yep.
sense for him to do it right before entering free agency.
Yo, and boy, what an interesting arbitration contract year it will be for Miami, who also has Jazz Chisholm Jr. in that field. And some recent comments from him suggest that, well, I mean, good thing a certain Miguel Rojas is out of the Marlins camp, because otherwise we wouldn't want to see the Jazz may not want to be with this team much longer. It's a very interesting year for Miami, and their stars. But anyway, Luis Arias is a fantastic pick, and he's one of my favorite baseball players. He's on my virtual version of my Mariners, and
Nice.
on MLB The Show, because I trust him to get a base hit almost every single time, and it shows in your choice for him for his third consecutive batting title. And I love it. I hope he can keep it going, especially because it will help a Miami team look, more compelling and make the NL even harder to call as we get down the stretch for postseason time. Well, here's an interesting point. I'm from Las Vegas, guys. I live here and have lived in Vegas for about 25 years, and there's but one major league Las Vegas guy, and that's Bryce Harper. And he's not necessarily super popular in my household, but whether you like it or not, he's one of the finest baseball players in the world. And he is my pick for the National League batting title holder, because while I have said the Braves have the biggest chip on their shoulder in the league, I think the Phillies have a pretty big one too. And the face of their team is Bryce Harper, and the bat of their team is Bryce Harper, arguably. There's a couple. But I do think it's Bryce Harper who does the most to earn a batting title this year and keep his Phillies near the top of contention come playoff time. You're
Sorry, I
stunned.
paused. I know I paused because there's a lot of players from Las Vegas, dude. When you said that, I was like, wait, isn't Brian from Las Vegas? And he is.
Eh,
And Chris Bryant, Tyler Anderson, Taylor Cole. There's a lot. Joey
well,
Gallo.
neither of them are as prominent to me. I don't think about those guys at all.
Okay,
But
that's
Bryce
fine.
is the most
That's what
prominent.
to say.
But you
Yeah,
can bury
you're right.
me.
You're
That's
right.
fine.
No,
Bury
no,
my knowledge of baseballers from the Valley, but we only
no,
talk
it's
about Bryce Harper, my guy. I promise you.
I'm all about it, dude. And the Phillies, if they want to, take the next step for them is winning the division and putting their heel down on the Braves, who they've gotten past last couple years in the postseason. It's going to be
Right.
behind Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
So definitely a good pick. Let's keep it rolling, Warren. What about the Cy Young? Let's
Yeah. Cy Young.
let's start it off with the
Ooh.
American League again. And Warren,
Mm-mm.
I want you to
Mm.
relax. I'm gonna toot your horn a little bit, okay? Just take it easy. I think I think George Kirby can be the Cy Young winner. I think
Fun.
I think that there's a little bit of a weaker group in the AL compared to the National League, and I think Kirby has the experience to and has shown the stuff that he could really take a step this year and lead the way.
Kirby getting the nod in his third complete season as a starting pitcher would be super exciting. A lot of people are buzzing about George Kirby, and I hope he never receives the Yankee money that I am predicting will take him away
Oh
from us
no.
at some point, right? But he's a New Yorker, and I wouldn't put it past him. But I would not put it past him to win this Cy Young either. It's a great choice. I'm going with one of his fellow rotation members. I mean, this is the
Oh,
number one rated pitching squad in all of baseball. So I'm going with Logan Gilbert. I think Logan Gilbert is a student of the game, unlike anyone even in that Seattle organization. I think is he's been proving the last couple of years that even though his lengthy release, right, one of the highest releases on that team, his kind of center cut fastball, as dangerous as it looks to me watching them play, and I go, oh my god, somebody's going to swing at that and knock it out of the park. It just doesn't happen. I think he is going to have the right amount of stuff to win the American League Cy Young Award on a team that, there's three viable contenders. Lots of the professionals I listen to are voting for Luis Castillo. So I'm excited to see if any of us are right, because a Mariner as a Cy Young Award winner hasn't happened since the great Felix Hernandez, and I'm down to see it happen again.
King.
The king, my dude. So it's cool. Thanks for picking the Seattle guys. So I don't think you hate me on the inside. All right. And for the National League, I think we almost could have put this earlier on, because my gut wants to agree that Spencer Strider is one of the finest pitchers in all of baseball, and he's young, and he's powerful, and he's got great control and command, and he's got the stash, right? The stash commands all the respect in the world. So I want to go with Strider. Are you going with Strider?
I have to, dude. I saw him debut with the
Ah,
Braves a couple years ago, and at the time, I was like, this guy reminds me of Syndergaard with his speed and his control, and he is a shot ahead of Syndergaard already, and
mm,
really took a step last year. And I could see him just continuing to grow. And he is at the age and has made the progressions over the last couple of years that if
mhm.
he just takes that next step, like it seems like he is and will, he will run away with the Cy Young.
Ooh, boy. You know, I really only started learning about Spencer Strider last year, and so to know that he's been on this path for a while is an appropriate reason to give him the nod, similar to a Kirby. It sounds like a similar vibe because they're both
Yeah,
younger.
it is.
They're both, I think, on their third complete year, so it's a cool pick for you, and we'll see if it really pans out. I think my official pick, just to give you one more wrinkle, and also a feather to your cap for being quite convincing, goes to Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray of the St. Louis Cardinals is the veteran centerpiece picked up from the Minnesota Twins over the offseason to go to the Cardinals to give them some stability, the spiritual successor to the Adam Wainwright vibe. However, this guy's not retiring, so Sonny Gray may be the reason why those St. Louis Cardinals look to contend, and I think of all their pitchers, he gives them the best shot to get a win every 5 days. So I'm going to go with Sonny Gray for Viva la Difference, but I love the Spencer Strider pick, and we'll see what happens. Are we out of awards yet? I'm worried.
Pretty much all the awards, I think. Let's top it off. Let's put a cherry on top of this is a neat little predictions thing that we will come back to at the end of the year, and we will
Mm-hmm.
judge and mock each other and ourselves. Let's top it off, Warren. Forget everything we just said. Outside of all of that, give me your biggest surprise of the 2024 MLB season. I want people to come back to this moment to snap this and be like, "Are aliens real? Did this guy know this was going to happen?" What is it?
Oh man. Okay, we are more prepared for this segment than we're implying. I did hint that somebody was going to get a nod from me from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so beyond the Seattle Mariners and the Arizona Mariners making great waves in the postseason and winning their divisions and such, my big surprise is that one O'Neill Cruz is going to be the home run derby champion, as bold a prediction as that could be when you look at guys like Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez and Aaron Judge and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think O'Neill Cruz is coming out of, oh, and Pete Alonso, my guy, of
Thank
course.
you.
Certainly an
Jeez.
incredibly
Home run,
important and
two-time home run champion, Pete Alonso. Thank you very much, sir.
totally fair. I will put respect on that name for sure. But O'Neill Cruz has been lighting it up and raking something fierce in spring training to the point where everybody is kind of aware of it all of a sudden, and I am aware of it too. So I'm going to say, what if O'Neill Cruz is the guy that not only keeps Pittsburgh well in All-Star Weekend and winning the home run derby, but actually helps Pittsburgh have a footing in that division all the way up to September? What if Pittsburgh
Wow.
almost makes it this year, misses it at the end, but it's because of O'Neill Cruz and the burgeoning big bat that we are starting to realize he truly has?
Bold. I like it, Warren. Okay, that's a good one. It's going to be hard to match that. I'm going to think about the whole league and take a wide stance. We kind of know who the best teams are and who the worst teams are, and I think we think of the worst teams. We think about teams like Colorado and
Boo.
Oakland, maybe the Angels. For me,
Oh,
Warren, none of those teams are going to finish at the bottom. No, not like Oakland did last year. This year, the worst team in Major League Baseball is going to be the Boston Red Sox. And I don't, Warren,
whoa!
I'm going to walk further out on the limb and say that they will not win 60 games.
Whoa! That is a lot of not believing in those Boston Red Sox. Well, if that doesn't light a fire under the fan base and tell them to revolt against this storied franchise, I don't know what will, but that's a hell of a prediction to think that the Boston Red Sox won't win 60 games and will be the worst team in baseball. behind those Athletics, behind those Rockies, behind those Pirates, behind etc. etc. etc.
Yeah.
Ay, 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 ay. What I love actually, Dan, is that AL Dub went with a National League prediction, if you think about it, and
Yeah.
NL Dan went with an American League idea. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to need your help with it too, because Boston opens the season against Seattle. So I'm going to need a sweep from you, Warren.
4 games in T-Mobile Arena Park. Sorry, my bad. I am from Las Vegas. But 4 games against the Mariners in T-Mobile Park. It's the perfect way for us to start the season, and I would love to see a 4-0 sweep for us. I will totally give our best energy to that for sure. Go M's. So, I believe that did it, my guy. Unless we want to break down even more little incremental things, I don't want to over predict how this season's going to go. And there's clearly so much potential for us to be outdated 30 minutes from now when Jordan Montgomery is signed to the Texas Rangers. But any last thoughts that you do wish to weigh in on before we call this predicted?
No, man, I think that's it. I'm going to predict that the Mets are going to get a win on opening day because that's what we do.
Okay.
Um, I'm pretty safe in saying that. And yeah, I'm going to predict that we'll be back next week to finally start talking about the regular season.
Yeah, and I'm excited for that too, guys. Baseball is finally here, and the games are going to count. And Dan and I are going to keep you updated on all of our fantasy fun. I hope you noticed our season started the other day, buddy, along with that Soul series. So I'm going to do my
So,
best to pay attention, guys. Shoot us shoot me all of your fantasy baseball tips. This is my first time trying to actually do it right, so I'll need your help. Shoot us your predictions, of course, in the comments. Do you think we've got it all right on our divisional winners? That certain teams, such as, well, the Baltimore Orioles and the Atlanta Braves, are a lock? And do you have a hard time choosing your divisional winners in those central divisions as much as, well, I clearly did? And how about the West, guys? We're talking about National League West being the best division in baseball. How stoked are you to try to pick one of their 5 teams to come out on top? Well, the ones that aren't the Rockies. And what about in the AL West, where, hey, it could be the Mariners, it could be the defending champion Rangers, it could be the Houston Astros. Those 3 teams were separated by 2 games, okay, last season. So, friendly reminder, they are that close together, okay, already. Dan. Yeah, missing the playoffs, my foot. Anyway, tell us down in the comments, guys, if our MVPs are your LVPs. Tell us down in the comments if you think there's a much more celebrated Las Vegas baseball player than Bryce Harper. And of course, tell us down in the comments if, well, it won't be a Seattle pitcher winning the American League Cy Young, because we'll be happy to tell you otherwise, apparently. But above all, we are grateful for your watch. We are grateful for your listen. Let us know how you're enjoying the product, however you prefer, so that we know we're covering your bases too. And from NL Dan Harrow, I'm AL Warren Sprague, and you can call me Al. We'll see you guys next time we take a trip around the bases.